And the book says, the elder will serve the younger, and the stronger will serve the weaker. Here it comes now. Then Jacob, in a place called Peniel, wrestles with a man. And while he's wrestling with this man, his thigh is thrown out of place. And he wrestles all night till the breaking of day. And when the day came, he had prevailed. And he said, I have seen God face to face, and my life has been preserved. So the one that he wrestled with said, your name shall no longer be known as Jacob. Your name shall be known as Israel. Israel means the supplanter. The supplanter. When you supplant somebody, you take something that don't belong to you by devious, deceitful means. You are the original people, therefore you are the first. You are the elder. You are the stronger. But the people, they were fighting in the womb. Now I want you to hear this. Your role has been usurped. You are the original, the natural ruler, and you on the bottom. The Johnny come lately is on the top. He's the real Israel. You got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now he, Jacob, or Israel, is going to usurp the role of God and the role of the black man.
It's two roles.
One nation is the older. That's you.
Yes, sir.
You're going to serve the younger. One nation is stronger, but you're going to serve that which is weaker than yourself.
That's right.
Then Esau comes in with the venison. And he said, Father, I bring you. He said, but, oh my God, but I can't take my blessing back. I gave it to your brother. He said, but isn't there some blessing left for me? He said, well, son, you're going to have to serve your brother. He said, but in the final analysis, the yoke of your brother will be broken.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And look what the Lord said. He said, 2 nations are in your womb.
God Almighty.
From one father.
Yes, sir.
2 nations. Yes, sir. Then it said, 2 peoples shall be separated from your body, and one people will be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. The older will serve the younger. See, it's talking about the beginning of the white race coming out of us. And they are the younger. We are the elder. But who's serving who? And they are naturally weaker. But the stronger is being subjected to the weaker. Israel don't represent Jews. Israel represents the whole white race. You are the God, the original man that he was struggling with.
That's right.
And ever since he's been on the planet, he's been struggling with God. Now here's this Jacob stole the birthright of his brother.
That's right. That's right.
And here's a people that stole your birthright and are running around like they are the chosen of God, and the choice of God is sitting under their foot.
I started Tai Chi at 50. Now I'm 68. And Dr.
Did y'all get all that? Anyhow, I would have started with something better, but that was my quick go-to for tonight because I did not have time to set up everything in advance. Hello, happy Sabbath to all of my kindred people of God. I hope all of you are well, and I as usual, did not know whether or not I was going to be able to do a stream tonight, but it turns out I was able to get home in enough time to get everything put together. I don't actually have a particular subject or agenda that I wanted to focus on tonight. This was really more of a meet up and just hang out, celebrate anybody that wants to stop by and say hello. And in the meantime, I'm going to run the two conflicting stories that blacks tell themselves just for it is for our knowledge, but most of us already know this story, but you may not know the other side. So that story I just showed is the NOI side, the Nation of Islam side. And their story that Farrakhan pushes is that we are indeed the Adamites. Adam and Eve, Adam means white man. He admits all that. And what's funny is then, though, it's like we didn't exist again suddenly all through until it was time for Israel to be born. And all of a sudden, when Jacob was born, then we are suddenly in existence again. And he doesn't explain how we are Adam, white man, put here for 6,000 years. That covers the entire biblical trail and the whole thing, all from Adam and Eve to now. And he doesn't explain how we exist somehow magically from Adam to Israel, and then suddenly we are reborn again as Israel, this anomaly. And then another part of his story is that John, the Baptist, or Jacob, some of the idiots go by Jacob or Jacob, did this eugenics program with prisoners on the island of Patmos and kept exterminating the darkest babies that were born and kept only the lighter skinned stuff, and that over time of doing that, they created the white race. So anyhow, that was story number one. And at least in that story, they admit that we are Israel. I don't know if you caught that, but he admits in there that the white race are Israel. And that the name Israel means white people. And he has already long ago, which I showed in one of my videos several years ago, he's already admitted that Adam means white man or the white race. So we've gotten both truths out of him from that side of the we was story. But they have another side. And so the other side is this version here where they are Israel. They are the Israelites, because that's what all the BHI and UCIC, that's the acronym, UCIC, those types, the black Hebrew Israelites, they go by that they are Israel and that we are Esau. Either way, it's still we wasing. I just wanted y'all to know the conflict among the black world. I could have done a video just specifically about this subject, but just for fun, we'll do it on a stream tonight to kick it off. This is the big conflict in the black religion world is most of them want to call themselves the Israelites because they have been told enough about the Bible that they know that Israel and the Israelites are who are going to be saved by God through Jesus Christ. And they are the chosen, and they are all the heroes of the Bible, essentially. Not the heroes, but the blessed, the elected of the Bible. The hero is obviously God and Jesus Christ and the Holy Ghost and, on down the line. But the other half, not half, but this other large portion of blacks follow Farrakhan and the NOI program, the Nation of Islam organization. And in their following of Farrakhan, they have to yield that white people are Adam and Eve are the white race, and that Israel means white people. So that's why I'm more akin to enjoying their wee-wuzzing, because at least their wee-wuzzing, without them realizing it, well, they do openly and do realize that they are admitting that we are Israel and that we are Adam and Eve. And that's all I care, because that's what the Bible says. So the other way, where blacks are Israelites and all this, and they're just included in part, or they are just the Israelites, it's completely opposite, of reality. So at least you get a little truth out of the NOI side, even if they have all this wee-wuzzing mixed in between. Now, here is the other version, the other story version. Hello, Deb of Christ. God bless you, dear, for stopping by so soon, and thank you for chiming in. Happy Sabbath to you, dear, and God bless. Okay, so this is the we was the Hebrews, we was the Israelites version, right? So this is the opposite of the Nation of Islam, Farrakhan, Malcolm X version. Ready? Here we go.
Germany's declaration, commitment to reparative justice.
Oh, and let me just say real quick, this is apparently Germany. I don't know if it's true. I haven't really checked it out to confirm that it's true, but it totally sounds like something that a European country would do. It even sounds like something that anywhere in America would do. Germany, according to this WeWas AI-made video, has supposedly declared that blacks ought to be included in our biblical narratives, and they're going to shell out some money from the white people there to pay for blacks to have a Black History Center, biblical Black History Center, built just for their race in our white German country. And this is an AI WeWas video discussing that and trying to say, therefore, blacks are the Israelites, right? But regardless of that, I was just going to use it for the info about what Germany is up to with Whitey's money over there. Ready? Here we go.
In a historic moment of reckoning, Germany issued a declaration of profound significance, acknowledging its role in perpetuating a Eurocentric historical narrative that systematically marginalized the contributions of the Black biblical Israelites. At a highly anticipated press conference attended by global leaders, scholars, and activists, German officials expressed deep regret for this oversight and unveiled a series of measures aimed at reparative justice. The German chancellor began the event with a powerful statement. For far too long, history has been written to exclude and diminish the contributions of the Black biblical Israelites. This exclusion has not only distorted our understanding of the past, but has also perpetuated a legacy of injustice and inequality. As a nation committed to truth and justice, we cannot remain silent in the face of this profound injustice. It is our moral responsibility to illuminate the truth and take tangible steps to address the historical wrongs that have been committed. This acknowledgement marked a watershed moment, as it represented one of the first instances of a Western nation openly addressing the historical erasure of African contributions to biblical history. German scholars whose meticulous research unearthed much of the suppressed evidence.
All right, I apologize for the technical error there. I didn't have my mic hooked up and going like I thought I did, and so while I thought I was talking to you all while the video was paused earlier, it turns out you couldn't hear me. So my bad. What I was saying though when I paused earlier is that Germany never had blacks, right? Germany has been pure white all the way until 2010 or something, when they finally started flooding non-whites into Germany and into Europe, generally speaking. Europe, they may have trickled a couple into Europe through before 2010, but they didn't ramp it up till 2010. And America started being flooded by blacks and non-whites in 1990. So that was the mud flood of 1990 is when it began anyway. But all of this is coming from a country. Germany is doing all this bull crap for blacks. You'll hear about it here in a moment. They're going to take money from Whitey and pay for the blacks to have their own biblical, racial, included in the Bible facility, like a museum or whatever, right? And, of course, white people could never set up a whites-only, and we're talking in Germany of all places, too. White people could never in a billion years set up, a whites-only biblical, racial place, right? And, of course, the mantra from the other side is always, well, every place is all white characters in all your paintings and stuff. Any biblical museum you create has all white characters by default. So every one of your other museums are all white museums. And that is true. But we don't get to openly declare them that they are whites only. And that is what the black facilities do get to do by putting the title black in the descriptor word black in the title of their facilities, their organizations, their movements. And so white people, if we were to do that and add the words white people or white, meaning racially white, in front of or on the title of any of our organizations, movements, campaigns, establishments, then we, of course, would be in huge trouble and the whole world would come crashing down on us. So, but we're working to change that. But for now, that's the way things are. So anyway, I apologize for the technical error. I will try not to make that mistake again, but I'm sure I will at least once. And so here we go. Oh, did you notice that right there? They got the, they had the, look at there, boom. A little bit of Calergy action. And remember, this video is definitely created by either a J or a Black. So, of course, this is what you're going to see in a lot of videos like this.
German scholars whose meticulous research unearthed much of the suppressed evidence reinforced the Chancellor's sentiments. Our research has shown that the contributions of these communities to biblical history and world culture are immeasurable, remarked a leading historian specializing in ancient civilizations. It is our moral duty to ensure their stories are told accurately and with respect. Recognizing the Black Israelites' legacy is not merely about revising history, it is about restoring dignity to communities whose narratives have been stripped from the record. Theologians also reflected on the spiritual and cultural ramifications of the suppressed history, emphasizing the necessity of reinterpreting biblical texts with a lens that acknowledges the African roots of many Israelite communities.
Now, the thing is, notice the wordplay, right? They have all this silly wordplay where they try to slide in words like inclusive and all this stuff, because those words are what allow them to just be in a place they don't belong, to have access to a history or a space or a place in time or a whatever that they don't belong in, that they blatantly don't belong in. It's kind of like Netflix turning Superman or Captain America to a black dude, right? It just doesn't make sense. It's antithetical to the existence of the thing itself, because the thing itself was white by nature of its being created by white people. And so, for them to use all this, they use all this word salad to try to weasel their way into not only being a part of our history, but actually being the beginners of it, the originators of it, the first ones of it. And we are these mutated, defective, latter existences from after they had already done everything, like built Germany, built Britain, whatever. So anyway, but listen to the word salad they use to weasel themselves into our history. And of course, these are supposed, quote, Germans, politicians who are, that he'll be quoting here in a minute, that spoke all this garbage to them at an event recently. Here we go.
Theologian observed, when we diminish the historical diversity of the Israelites, we not only distort the Bible's message, but also alienate millions who share in that heritage. By reclaiming these narratives, we reaffirm the universality and inclusivity of the biblical story.
Meanwhile, the biblical story is not universality at all, as they called it. It's not that at all. It is totally exclusive to only Israel. And if you look at all of the pro-black things about black Israelites, they don't ever acknowledge white people are Israelites at all. They declare only they are Israel, right? So it just as much as they would condemn me for explaining to you all that only we are Israel and only white people are Adamites and yada yada, Jews do that for themselves and declare everyone else are not actual mankind. But really it's because they've just taken our God's instruction manual where he told us that only we are mankind, and they've applied it to themselves knowing that they're full of shit. It's like copium for them. And now they've told it to themselves for so many generations, and they have so much of the world fooled that they're just running with it now in their own minds, right? But they know deep down that they're full of crap. They know deep down, all Jays know that they are not Israelites. They know they descend from Esau and his 2 Canaanite wives. So they basically are just wee-wuzzing themselves. They're the first wee-wuzzers. Before blacks ever knew anything about wee-wuzzing, the Jays were the first wee-wuzzers for many, many centuries. And so now that they have been using the blacks for however long, they have taught the blacks how to wee-wuzz. But wee-wuzzing, we always think of it as a blacktivity, but it actually is a Jewtivity, and then the Jews taught the blacks to make it blacktivity. Here we go.
Germany's commitment to reparative justice extended beyond words, manifesting in a comprehensive and actionable plan designed to address the historical injustices against the black biblical Israelites. At the core of this plan was the recognition that acknowledgement without action would be insufficient.
So see, it's not enough to just tell the blacks, hey, fine, you can pretend you were in our Bible with us. Nope, got to have action. What does action mean?
The German government unveiled a series of initiatives aimed at academic and cultural restitution, signaling its intention to lead by example in the global effort to rectify historical wrongs. One cornerstone measure announced was the establishment of a global center for African Israelite studies.
See what I mean? It's racial only for them, biblical studies, yada yada, wee-wuzzing and stealing our religion.
Headquartered in Berlin, this interdisciplinary research institution would serve as a hub for scholars, archaeologists, and theologians worldwide to collaborate on uncovering and disseminating the history of the Black Israelites. The center's objectives include digitizing ancient manuscripts, conducting archaeological expeditions in Africa.
Hey, let me just interject. Digitizing ancient manuscripts, you know what that'll really mean? That'll mean taking ancient pictures, ancient mosaics that our Hebrew Israelite people did, that you can still see today in Beth One Synagogue or Doro Europos or whatever. They mean taking those pictures and photoshopping them to make them look like blacks. That's what they really mean.
And hosting international conferences to share findings with the global academic community. The German government pledged substantial...
Hey, look, they misspelled Israelites on the bottom there. The legacy of the Black Israelites.
...funding to ensure the center's sustainability and success, signaling a long-term commitment to this cause. Germany also announced the creation of partnership programs with African and African American academic institutions. These partnerships aim to foster collaborative research, facilitate the exchange of scholars and students, and provide grants for projects focused on the Black Israelites' legacy. By empowering institutions in Africa and the diaspora, Germany seeks to decentralize the narrative-building process and ensure that communities most affected by historical erasure play a leading role in reclaiming their heritage.
Oh, so see right there, they don't get to just be included. They are given, handed over. The beast is handed over. The beasts are handed over power over Israel, over millions of white people. They're given the leading role.
In addition to academic initiatives, Germany committed to cultural and educational programs designed to reconnect African diasporic communities with their Israelite heritage.
Yeah, and what that'll end up meaning is teaching blacks and white kids in German schools that the blacks are the God's chosen people.
This includes funding cultural festivals, art exhibitions, and documentary films that celebrate the traditions, practices, and historical journeys of the Black Israelites. Educational programs, such as scholarships for students of African descent to study theology and history in Germany, were also introduced. These programs aim to bridge the gap between academic research and public understanding, ensuring that the knowledge unearthed reaches a broader audience.
I mean, can you imagine our ancestors seeing us allow all of this garbage, all this anti-white, made up we was nonsense, our money being stolen from us by the Jews, who they warned us about all through the centuries over and over and over again. And then not only is our money stolen from us by them, then they're taking it and using it to create this type of anti-white, and of course you don't see them doing this with Asians or Arabs or Mexicans or anyone. No. They pick the blacks specifically, just like they did in all their writings they've detailed, and it's because they consider the blacks to be the lowest creation on earth that is an upright biped. So, by using the blacks, the total opposite of white people, against us, it is a maximum humiliation ritual against white people, or it's one of the prongs of maximum humiliation against white people. And so that is why the blacks are used in particular instead of, just any other race. Or that's why you don't see them creating Asians or the Christians, facilities. You don't see them like pandering to other races as though they were Israelites too. You know what I mean? You only see it being... you only see our money being taken from us and it just given over to the blacks. So, and that's what the Jews have detailed since long ago that they were going to do.
Another key component of Germany's reparative plan was the launch of a global awareness campaign titled Reclaiming Our Shared History. Designed to challenge Eurocentric narratives, This campaign aims to educate the public about the interconnectedness of African and biblical histories.
Notice right here, they already got it starting to look like a classroom, and that's because eventually you will have, you mark my words, y'all think I'm, exaggerating or stretching. This will be what certain classrooms in our schools look like. See the walls? See all the black Israelites crap wrote all over the walls, the giant Jewish flag of Remphan there, and all that stuff. This is our children's future. This is what your children and grandchildren will walk in, have to sit an hour a day in some class, surrounded by blacks on all sides, surrounded by other types too, but a lot of blacks. That's what the Jews plan. They want white people totally engulfed in blacks. And anytime they don't have enough blacks, then they send Arabs, they send Indians, they send whoever. But when they have enough blacks, that's what they plan on filling all whitey world up with. And so eventually, this right here, this design of a classroom in any random public school is a Jew's wet dream. This is exactly what Jews long for our schools to look like, long for the teachers and the classrooms to look like. And you'll notice the whole entire classroom is black. So there's not even one white kid in there, which is, again, the rest of their ultimate dream. But for now, it would be one white kid in just the middle of the classroom, and then he'd be surrounded on every side. Actually, be a little white girl, and she'd be surrounded on every side by, these 30 blacks. Anyway, here we go.
Through partnerships with media outlets, museums, and schools.
See there, partnerships with media outlets, that's the Jews, museums, probably owned by the Jews nowadays, and schools. And Jews control all of our school curriculum. The campaign will, carry on. It's going to say in a minute what all it'll say, but the idea is the narrative will be pushed.
The campaign will disseminate the findings of German scholars and promote a more inclusive understanding of the Israelite story. The production of multilingual...
Look at there, reparative grants. Look at this classroom, y'all. This is literally what they want. I'm not exaggerating. This is the blacks' wet dream. This is the Jews' wet dream. And so notice there's like a white guy sitting there. There's a few white guys in here. But they're surrounded on all sides. They got the black queen up on the wall with the star Remphan to remind you it's right next to the blacks, so that reminds you that, hey, blacks are the real Jays, which I think it's hilarious that they don't realize that Jews are the enemy in the Bible, so they accidentally want to claim to be them. But, just had to stop again and point out that reparative grants, right? Notice how it's wrote really big on the window. I mean, notice how no one's paying attention to anyone else. This is how the chaotic classes would actually become in the future. It would just be everybody's in a room together. Oh, yeah, there's a white girl sitting at a table with a black dude, of course. So this is the kind of chaos that would be going on in a classroom in the future. This kind of just unorganized nonsense mess where no one's really learning anything. Everyone's just chilling and hanging out with whoever in the class they want to hang out with. And some of them don't even have anyone to hang out with, so they're just looking around or playing with themselves. And the teacher, who could be the teacher, I guess, is off to the left where the flip chart is, and she's just playing with herself at the flip chart. So no one's learning anything. Everyone's just hanging out. This is exactly how this and the one that it showed a moment ago are like the Jews' wet dream for our future, and it will be the future of our schools. So Arkansas is looking better every day.
educational materials is also planned to ensure these insights reach diverse audiences worldwide. Recognizing the importance of material restitution, Germany announced grants for African diasporic communities to support initiatives celebrating and preserving their cultural heritage.
So there you go, taking the money from the whiteys and paying for the blacks to have whatever the hell they want to use the money for. They're going to claim they'll build a building, but of course they won't. Then they'll cry, hey, we spent all the money on black interested things like shoes and cars and rims, and now we ain't got nowhere. We ain't got no building. And then Whitey will have to give them a free venue somewhere to set up shop in. And that will come later after they've already blown all this money that's granted to them that they won't ever have to pay back, because after all, that's what a grant is all about. And so just more theft from white people to gibs to them.
These grants aim to fund projects such as restoring historical sites, creating community centers, and developing educational resources for young people.
Now, keep in mind, there are no black historical centers. So what they mean is they're just going to create made-up new ones, because there is no black historical landmarks or monuments or locations in Germany that need to be restored.
The German government emphasized that these grants are not acts of charity, but reparative measures to address the harm caused by centuries of historical erasure.
Sure.
Perhaps most significantly, Germany pledged to advocate for the inclusion of the black.
Keep in mind, they wouldn't have had to have made that statement if it wasn't obvious that everyone is thinking that, because that's the obvious conclusion of why they're doing it.
Black Israelites narrative in global educational curricula. By collaborating with UNESCO and other international organizations, Germany aims to ensure that textbooks and teaching materials reflect the diversity of the Israelite experience. This effort seeks to dismantle the monocultural portrayals that have dominated historical education and foster a more accurate and inclusive understanding of world history.
And by dominated historical record, they mean everyone who wrote down the record wrote down what they saw, and all through the entirety of biblical everything from, the beginning, Adam and Eve, to now, has only been white people involved. That's it.
Germany's declaration represents a monumental step forward in the global pursuit of historical justice. By acknowledging its complicity in the suppression of African contributions to biblical history.
Now, notice when it's a Jewish house, the whole family is one race. No problem. It's all Jews. No mix-up here. But whenever it'd be showing a white family sitting there looking at the computer with an American flag, there'd be a nog there, there'd be some mixed baby there, abomination.
History, and taking tangible steps to address this injustice, Germany has set a precedent for other nations. This initiative underscores the importance of moving beyond symbolic gestures to actions that have meaningful and lasting impact. The implications of Germany's commitment are far-reaching. For African and African-descended communities, these initiatives offer an opportunity to reconnect with a heritage long denied. By restoring the Black Israelites' place in biblical history, Germany's efforts provide a sense of empowerment and affirmation to millions who share in this legacy. For the academic community, the declaration opens new avenues of research and collaboration.
Check it out. There's another classroom the Jews want. The blacks teaching everybody. Got the white girl sitting next to the black boys.
Challenging scholars to rethink entrenched assumptions and embrace a more inclusive approach to history. On a broader level, Germany's actions highlight the transformative power of truth and reconciliation. In a world grappling with the legacies of colonialism and systemic racism, Germany's declaration serves as a reminder that confronting the past is not merely an academic exercise, but a moral imperative. By addressing historical injustices, nations can lay the groundwork for a more equitable and inclusive future. Germany's declaration of commitment to reparative justice is not just an acknowledgement of past wrong.
Look at there at the bottom where the word past is, and it's got purple highlighted on it. Look right beneath that on the little book there. It says Ancient Israel, Africa.
Belongs, but a blueprint for how nations can address the legacies of historical erasure. Through its initiatives, Germany has demonstrated that the pursuit of truth requires both courage.
Wow, look at the spelling of Israelites up on the top of that big sign. Israelites.
And action. As the world watches, Germany's efforts serve as an invitation for other nations to join in the work of restoring marginalized histories and building a more just and inclusive global narrative. The journey to reparative justice is far from complete, but Germany's bold steps offer a hopeful vision of what is possible.
Oh, here we go. Look at this. You got the black Jews, y'all. Look at them. Don't they look so funny when they cosplay wearing other types' garb? I mean, blacks have never created any clothing at all, much less created that type of clothing, much less ever created yarmulkes or any of the other nonsense. You don't ever see them walking around with a stupid little strap on their arm or do any of the shit that any of the ancient Hebrew Jews, or the one Jews. It's basically a lot of these practices that Jews do. They're very ancient practices that were not really any white people stopped doing them long ago, even before Jesus Christ. And then the things that white people still kept were the feasts and the sacrifices, right? We still had those, and we had those until Christ. And then once Christ was born, even before his sacrifice, we just stopped once we knew the Savior had been born. And so that's why you don't read anywhere where Christ attended sacrifices or anything like that, because once the Savior was born, we all knew about it. We knew since the moment he was born, and the word started spreading around. And before we knew it, everybody pretty much knew that needed to know in our immediate vicinity there where Christ was. And so because we knew a Savior had been born, we stopped the animal sacrifices, knowing that he someday would be our ultimate sacrifice and that he was already with us. But meanwhile, blacks have never done any of those things. Blacks, you show up anywhere where blacks have had no contact with white people, and they have no idea about clothing or any of this stuff that it shows in the picture. They had no idea about hats or clothing or shoes or any type of rituals like what ancient Hebrews did. So it's just funny to see them done up by AI or whatever. So of course it's always AI now, but anytime you ever see them trying to Photoshop themselves wearing this type of clothing and stuff before AI came out, it's so funny. They look like total clowns.
When nations confront their past with honesty and resolve.
Let me just say real quick hello to Doc Holiday. God bless and happy Sabbath to you. And Gaius Marius. God bless and happy Sabbath to you as well.
3. Implications for the world, especially America. Germany's bold declaration regarding the Black Israelites' legacy reverberates far beyond its own borders, carrying profound implications for the world, particularly the United States. As a nation where the African-American experience is deeply intertwined with questions of identity, legacy, and belonging, America stands to gain significantly from the lessons embedded in Germany's acknowledgement. For centuries, African-Americans have grappled with the erasure and distortion of their histories, often facing systemic barriers in their quest to reclaim their cultural heritage. Germany's acknowledgement of the Black Israelites.
All right, real quick. Now, the thing I wanted to just re-stress that I have already mentioned in other streams, but I'm going to just stress it again while this cruises along, and it's going to be done here in a minute. I won't run it all the way, I don't think, anyway. But, because I have other stuff we can move on to, but the bottom line is this is the wet dream. This is the plan for the future, for our public schools, for our cities and our country. And the more of this we allow, the worse and worse America is going to dwindle into imaginary BS being accepted as truth, and to the point where we can never even it'll get so bad that we won't even be able to snap white people out of the beliefs of these things. But more importantly, well, I may not say more importantly, but on another note, just as important is, and this is the part I've been mentioning in other streams, is they're flooding the internet with this stuff, right? This is just one AI pro-black video out of millions of pro-black AI videos that are being pumped out every day onto YouTube and then other places. I'm sure there are plenty of other platforms that I don't get on where they, push this type of AI stuff, or at least just post it, even if they don't aggressively push it, but they'll just post it at other locations so that anywhere AI, it doesn't matter where, because AI will pull from everywhere, right? So after AI pulls all the data from everywhere available, it will have so many examples of blacks are the Israelites, black history, Israelites, blah, 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 about blacks being Israelites, that it will start accepting that must be a fact, because, after all, it doesn't really know truth from untruth. What it goes by to determine facts, I imagine, for the most part, when it's truly just operating on its own accord, will be how many yays and nays, or how much mention is there of a thing. And so, like, let's say you tried to trick AI and it was truly operating just kind of on its own as people expect it to be, and you said something you asked it a nonsensical thing, right? It would be able to, based on all the world's knowledge it looks at, or all the world's data that's available online, and it finds nothing mentioned about the nonsensical question you asked, it would determine, based on nothing existing about that it must be nonsensical, right? And it will respond to you that way, that I can't answer your question, and it may not elaborate unless you force it to. But if you did force it to, it would probably say, there is no mention of anything like that anywhere in the world ever available online, so it must be BS, Whereas, and then it may give you what the most repeated thing ever online by humanity known of is. So, at that point, let's say they flood the internet with so much black Israelites crap, right, that you end up asking AI, hey, why were Israelites only white people? AI will, go through all the info available and determine an answer to you that Israelites weren't white, that they must have been black. And it'll think that and answer that way, because it will accept every one of these retarded videos as another piece of evidence for that way being the fact, right? And this is part of, like, the ghetto secret, right? It's the ghetto version of Scientology, The Secret. And what it is they're just going to keep, and it's just communism's modus operandi as well with propaganda, is you pick what you wish was the case, and then you just keep repeating that lie over and over again of the situation being the way you wish it was, as though it's real and reality and true already. And you just keep repeating that lie until, after a generation or two, everyone in the world just accepts it as fact. Now, it does work that way for the Jews. The Jews have already been practicing this for a long time, but they've been trying to teach the blacks to do it. So that's what the blacks are up to with all their wee-wuzzing, like I mentioned earlier. So because of all of this, AI, when our white children ask AI in the future, hey, what color were the Israelites really? AI will answer them blacks, that Israelites were black. And it'll be because of all of these stupid extra, flooded onto the internet, fake proofs, And it'll just accept each one of those as a yay for them being blacks instead of a nay. And it'll just immediately, over, the process of scanning all the data, it will deduce that Israelites must be blacks. So that's why, and this is just another example of why non-whites should never be allowed to have access to white people technology, like cell phones and the internet. They shouldn't be allowed to make videos or use our technology to create music. Think about if we had never allowed them to ever have access or taught any of them to have use of any of our technologies, there would be no rap. There'd be no rap. Not one song of rap would exist in the whole world. Which automatically would erase all of the anti-white garbage that ever came and ever does come through and out of rap. Also, there would be no movies, no anti-white movies the blacks have made. All of that would be non-existent. There would be none of these famous black comedians who made their whole living off of making fun of white people right to their faces, all while white people laughed at themselves, thinking that the blacks in the room and the black comedian are laughing with them, when in fact they were laughing at them. There would be no black sports players because, they wouldn't have access to any of our things, including sports or any of the other things, and if you eliminate them having access, but let's just stick with the digital world. If we never allowed them to have access to our technology like internet, cell phones, yada, yada, making videos, none of these videos would ever exist. AI could never be skewed to believing some of this we was garbage as factual to give as answers of fact to people in the future or even right now. And so, when I tell people at first these things like that non-whites should never have been allowed to have access to our technology and our inventions and things, they think that's so audacious to say. They think, wow, how could this guy even think that way? How could does this guy hear himself talking? But what they don't realize is they're the one who is in this retarded stupor. Non-whites would never surrender any up that they have, any advantage they have over white people. If they had one, they would never in a million years surrender that understanding or that ability over to white people, freely share it to the white people or any other non-white race for that matter, because it gives them an advantage. They would never in a million years want to give up that advantage, be it technologically or some invention or whatever. And so only white people are stupid enough to cuck away our inventions and technology to other races, which was foolish and idiotic and suicidal for us to do. Just like we're cucking away our countries, our schools, our churches now. We first started by, not first started, but we are also allowing cuckery of our technology and inventions. And maybe we did first start with that anyway, because before technology, we were cucking away our inventions to them. Basically, right when we would meet them, we would try to teach non-whites how to farm. We'd try to teach them, our little tricks about keeping the soil fertile so that it would produce crops every year. Save the Sabbath year, that you're supposed to let the land plot rest. And so, white people were fools to surrender our technologies over, just freely give over our technologies to non-whites. That was just the dumbest, most idiotic, suicidal thing. And this type of stuff is what it has gotten us, and all of this will be used against us in the future with AI. AI will be duped by all this garbage, into repeating this to all of our white children of the future if we don't do something about it, immediately.
Israelites and its commitment to reparative justice serves as a powerful validation of these efforts. It offers a model for how nations can confront uncomfortable truths, take responsibility for historical injustices, and create pathways toward reconciliation and empowerment. In the United States, biblical history has often been framed through a narrow Eurocentric perspective that excludes the diverse peoples and cultures integral to the biblical narrative. This lens, deeply rooted in colonial and theological traditions, has shaped not only religious teachings, but also broader societal perceptions of identity and heritage. Germany's revelations directly challenge these traditional views, presenting evidence that the Israelite story is far more diverse and interconnected than previously acknowledged. This new narrative compels Americans to confront long-held assumptions about the origins and movements of biblical peoples, recognizing that Africa played a central role in shaping the traditions and histories foundational to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This shift has the potential to revolutionize how theology is taught in churches, schools, and seminaries across the United States. By incorporating the contributions of the Black Israelites into biblical studies, educators and religious leaders can offer a more inclusive and accurate interpretation of Scripture.
See, there you go. Two things there. A more inclusive interpretation of Scriptures. Our Scriptures are not for interpretation. Okay? Books are not meant to be interpreted. When you read a book, you don't read the story and then go, well, I determined that this character is this way. And I think your opinions don't matter according to the story. All right, so now you have the freedom, though, to like the villain in the story if you wish, instead of the good person. You might think, I don't like that good person based on reading the story. She sounded like a snob. I kind of rather side with the villain in the story. Well, that's fine, but it doesn't change the story. The story is, and to anyone who reads it, the story will consistently be whatever it is, that there are good characters in the story, there are bad characters in the story, there are indifferent characters in the story that are either friends with the good or the bad characters, and there are whatever else that goes on, bystanders, victims. And so if you read any story, you don't interpret it, right? It's not like a piece of weird art on a wall that can't speak and can't explain itself. And it's just a splash of color and a couple of squiggly lines, and these goofy liberals stand there and stare at it for an hour and argue, or not argue, but contemplate what must have been going through the artist's mind when he slammed a little freaking cup of paint on the freaking canvas. I mean, it's nothing like that. A story is, you read it, it tells you what's going on. It tells you who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. Here's the plot of the story. Here's what the bad guys are trying to do to the good guys. Here are the innocent victims. Here's what happens along the way. Here's the timeline of the story, the sequence of events. And because you're reading it just beginning to end as a book is supposed to be read, they have it built as such that it will give you the timeline, the events will happen in the timeline. They want you to know them for the story. You will be introduced the characters at the right places, and you will be introduced to them the right way, where you can eventually understand, okay, this is a good guy, okay, that's a bad guy in the story, whatever. And there's no need to interpret it. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some weird style of books where they write them to perhaps allow interpretation. I'm sure there's a type of style of writing that there are some books made in that fashion. But the typical book, anytime you get a book, I don't care what it is, some famous story, some famous author, some famous whatever, there will be good guys, villains, indifference, victims, innocent victims, bad victims, good victims, whatever it is. There will be all these characters, and they will be identifiable. And the story itself will not be interpretable. It'll just be, if you try to interpret it some other way, you'll just be a moron who's making up your own version of the story to appease yourself. You won't actually be just accepting the story for what it is. And so, hey, let me just say hello to anybody else who's joined in. Okay, Precision Etica, I see your comment there. Hello, God bless you, happy Sabbath to you. And he said, the name Adama in Greek is associated with the concept of unyielding, or, let me scoot it down because I can't see the whole word, unconquerable. Found that interesting. Ancient Greek has a vocabulary of approximately 5 million words. Awesome. Dang, I didn't know they had that huge of a vocab. That's awesome. Great info there. Thank you for that. I'll screenshot that later on if I go back through the thing. So basically, you know, the deal is, you know, not only should you be aware of both of these versions of the We Was story. Let me say why first, though, before I say not only and continue on. So you need to be aware of both of these stories, but the reason why is because in the future you're going to have to refute this garbage to your grandchildren, if you're very young, perhaps to your children. And so, and this is all coming lightning fast. You know, we if we were to try to explain this to our parents, you know, who grew up in an all-white America and lived all the way to their older years in an all-white America, they would think, man, that's like so far off. What are you worried about? Just enjoy your life. But what they don't realize is in just their grandchildren, your children's lifetimes, their country has already been taken away from them. And so their grandchildren, your children, are already growing up in an America that is ruined and stolen and taken from us. So it's only going to get exponentially worse as blacks are handed over more and more positions of power over us millions of white people. And as they're handed more and more of our money just stolen from us and given to them, it's literally going to cause white people to end up being the ones, the role reversal, you know, where blacks used to be all sitting on the sidewalk in the hot sun waiting on the bus at the bus stop, and white people are sitting in their cars at the stoplight just trying not to look at the blacks sitting there in the heat while they got their nice AC on and whatever. It's going to be total role reversal, just like I've warned you all before, that the Jews desire for the blacks and for the whites. They want us, white people, sitting in the hot sun at the bus stop, at the intersection, in front of all the blacks that are sitting in their brand new Jaguars and Maseratis and Aston Martins and their air conditioning going, keeping them all cool in there with their white girl. And that's what they want for white people. They want full role reversal. That's what they want. And then also the blacks get white girls. So be preparing yourself in the future for these things because, you know, like we can laugh at the idiocy of it and stuff now because we understand that it's all BS. But you got to remember that all of our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren in the future, all of our white kids in the future have no idea. They're a blank slate, like a brand new puppy. You know, I don't mean to reduce them to something like that, but think of how a brand new puppy is completely, you know, trainable or whatever. A child is the same way. A child knows nothing until you explain every little thing to them. So, you know, if they grow up in this new America where they're surrounded on all sides with blacks and other various non-whites, so they're this very faint anomaly in the classroom and in their school, and then every classroom is these pro-black teachers, you know, that have black Israelite history all over the walls and reparations in huge letters all over the walls and whitey bad examples all over the walls. They're already almost living like that right now. And it's only going to get hyper worse as blacks are handed more of these situations like leadership positions, you know, school deans and principals and and school teachers and coaches. It's just going to get horrendously bad. So it's good to know both of these versions of WHITEY-ONLY so that you'll be able to explain to your kids and your grandkids how their lives are structured versus what the truth is, because they do steal their structure from white people, just like the Jews do. The Jews are who taught them to do it that way. So, it's going to be our job. All right, we owe it to our children and our grandchildren. Think about how upset they'll be with you when they grow up to adults and go, "Dadgummit, if only my grandpa had told me that. If only my dad had taught me that. So I didn't spend my whole life cucking to blacks. It took me all the way to 40-something or 50-something or 60-something years old to realize that I've been cucking to blacks, shooting myself in my own foot cucking to them." They'll be so mad at you. Why didn't my grandpa tell me? Why didn't my dad tell me? Why didn't my cool-ass uncle warn me? When I was 15 or 12 or 25 or 35. Why did he let me go all the way to 58 years old and die on me? And I'm figuring out that I should have never been cucking to the blacks all along. So that's the issue. And, I realize it's Sabbath. I'd like us to party tonight and stuff. I'm a little down and out tonight physically. I apologize if I'm not super high energy tonight. I'm just physically beat down. I've been doing a lot outside in the heat and everything. So I'm just a little wore out. That's all. But I still wanted to, just flip through some things tonight. I have plenty of tabs to go through. I'm not going to stay on this one very much longer, or maybe I'll just leave it from here, because you've already seen what Germany's talking about doing or promises they're going to do for blacks or whatever with Germans, people's money. So we'll move on to another tab, but I was just pacing around for a minute to just re-emphasize this situation about AI and all of these bajillions of AI videos coming out, pro-black videos, whatever, coming out. They're pumping out hundreds of these, I would say, maybe not per day, but definitely per week. And they come up with a new scheme every several days or every few days or something. They come up with a new title scheme for whatever new batch of videos they've just put out. And I did not manage to successfully figure out any of those those weird titles they're doing before this stream tonight. But I will find them eventually, and I will display them on another doodad. So this is BHI Black. This is a search on YouTube that you can do. BHI Black. And then what you do is you scroll along and you'll see, just read the titles of these videos, right? And you'll see that they are all pretty much openly pro-black. Of course, there's one here and there that's an anomalous example that isn't. This guy here supposedly went and, argued or debunked them or whatever. So, of course, you're going to see, you'll almost always see some filler videos that kind of soften up the search. But all you got to do is just keep going. And so if you just keep on trucking, you will start seeing all of the, hardcore pro-black videos that are all anti-white, right? Sorry, this thing's scrolling a little slow, so I'm going to use the other way instead. So like see these type of you'll notice there are a billion shorts on YouTube now from all of these BHI and ICUC blacks. And so what I'm doing is I'm just going to scroll through here and let you notice how much AI stuff is popping up, right? So there's one. And I'm not going to just keep saying there's one, but I'm just to give you an idea what you're looking for here. You know, there's one. And so basically, you know, and you're going to run into certain things along through here that are not that. But if you just trust it and keep going, right? Just keep going. And you will keep running into all of this new stuff. Notice, look, 10 days ago. See when this one was 2 weeks ago. See, these are all super new. 6 days ago. So this has been going on now for a while. And yet every day, look, a month ago, they cranked these out. Look, more cosplay. Look at that. Oh, man, that's so funny. If only they realized how silly they look wearing other races' clothes. Let's see here. This one a month ago. Another one a day ago. Oh, no, that one's not relevant. But let's see here. That's going to be shorts, so we got past that. Boy, my internet's lagging tonight, even though I have like really high-speed internet now. I don't know why it's going slow. Maybe YouTube's bogging. Come on, YouTube. This one a month ago, you know. Nice get up there, homie. Look, a month ago, a year ago. Well, that has a white dude. Looks like he made that, but let's see here. 10 days ago. 5 months ago. So see, it's been kind of a thing happening for, you know, here 4 weeks ago. I don't know why I just didn't say a month ago. 3 weeks ago. See, this is like a pretty new thing. I mean, it's only just started happening, I would say maybe the last 6 months, because you don't really see a ton of these videos from years ago. It's all been within a few months. So look, 2 weeks ago. And, you know, I put BHI black, so this would bring up the most popular, the most heavy viewed, whatever in theory, but instead it's all just new videos constantly. 2 weeks ago, 8 days ago. Here's a 9 months ago, and that's really old for BHI AI stuff. So this is a pretty new phenomenon for them. And, of course, it is for everyone, but they have now picked up on it. And either it's a bunch of blacks doing it, or it could be just some Jews doing it. You know, it could be the case. We're hitting some Indian mess here. Let's get past all that. Look at, here we go. Let's go back up here real quick. We are the chosen and the leaders. Hashtag black man. Get past some more Indian mess. And just in case, the Indians may flood that one up really hard. So what we'll do is we'll move over here. And this one is BHI Black Israel, right? I added the word Israel. So then you really see more, you know. There's an 8 months ago one. And I'm just going to scroll along and let you see the highlight or the titles. And I'm going to be looking for the AI stuff. Like there was one. There's an AI, see? But that's old school, and that's 7 years ago. Man, that's the most throwback one I've ever seen. Oh, okay, that's why it only had a little clip of AI. But like the full beginning to end AI videos, they seem like they all started within just like this last year, even just a few months ago. Let's go back up and see what that said. Oh, okay, that was a white guy confronting them, I guess. And you know, you got, like I said, you got to go way down these searches because they sometimes have it all buried. But look, boom, now I'm starting to hit the stuff. Let me scroll up a little bit here so you can see this one. This is the ones they have like history they don't want you to know and all this mess. Let me keep going. Like, here we go. Look, Black Israel. 1 year ago. See, that seems more about right. That's about as far back as I ever see them go when it comes to the AI. And usually you don't see one that old. Hey, here we go. See how this is definitely all AI 3 months ago, you know? So, man. 8 months ago. Okay. 2 years ago. That one's pretty old. Definitely double as old as what I'm used to seeing a year ago. So I guess maybe they have been cranking these out now for a good bit. Look, a year ago. I forgot y'all can't see my cursor. I can see it, but I forgot that I took it off the screen. 6 days ago. Two weeks ago. So, and I don't have it set up on time, you know, so this is like just showing you that they literally will just, even when you're getting random ones, there are so many coming out right now that you are given a lot of these, you know, freshly made ones you're being offered to see. So, let me move on to the other stuff I wanted to show you. So, I guess we'll start with this one. This is Jesus Wasn't White. This is the Jesus Wasn't White search, right? Well, of course, you know the Nogs have a field day with this title. So there are gobs of videos saying Jesus wasn't white. And that was going to be the purpose of this search, was to scroll down through here and show you just how bad and how plentiful. Oh, I'm all the way at the bottom. Whoops. Let me go back up to homepage. Bam. Here we go. Jesus wasn't white. This is what you get right here. Millions and millions. It's going to bog because I went so far down it trying to find the bottom. This is like an absolute bottomless pit. And they didn't need to put much filler in here. It's pretty much all anti-white with a rare exception. I think one time anywhere in here. But I mean, I'm talking ridiculous amounts of this exact topic. I would say Jesus Isn't White is probably one of the, or Jesus Wasn't White, as they say. I would say it's one of the most popular titles on YouTube of pretty much any videos. So I'm just going to scroll here and let you see if we see one that looks, you know, convincing, if you will. We'll click it and let it go for a minute. Let's see here. Look, see, and you know they're always showing our Lord and Savior as a black, so they're blaspheming our Lord. Come on. Man, YouTube's bogging like heck. Let's see here. You know, and it may sound like I'm exaggerating about this, where it's when I say that it's a bottomless pit, that you'll go so far and keep seeing Jesus wasn't white in every title that YouTube will bog like heck. Like it literally gets to a point where it can't even keep loading pages for you anymore. And it's just because you're so far down. That's why it's bogging right now really hard, because I've already been way the heck down this thing. To make it go fast, I'd have to just refresh the page where it would get rid of all these others. But I've already scrolled, you know, back up to home to the top. But my cursor is so tiny that it can't even load the next 3 at a time. This guy right here, what an idiot. And I told him so in a comment. And I feel bad, kind of. I called him a cucked retard. I probably shouldn't have done that. But it just angers me so bad when white people, or perhaps he's Jewish, but I'm sure he's probably just a cucked white guy, say such anti-white garbage, you know? It just angers me beyond imagination. And basically, he wrote a poem, an anti-white cuckery poem. And, it's like nauseating to listen to. All right. And, you know, there are gobs and gobs of YouTube shorts you'll notice. I'm sorry it's blowing by some of the titles, but it's hard for me to keep stopping and scrolling up slightly for you to see some of the titles it skips. So I'm just I'm hitting page down and trying to wait on it to load the next piece. It just can't even function because it's so far down. And the same thing goes for Black Jesus. If you put in Black Jesus, which I also have a tab of that, it will go and go and go seemingly forever. Look, Jesus weren't white. Bad grammar for a white guy there, homie. But they always put he was a Jew because they've never read their freaking Bible. I shouldn't say that. Of course they have read their Holy Bible, but they didn't comprehend it, that's for sure. Yeah, I'm sitting here like hitting page down and it's just stuck. Can't even go to the next thing. See, there'll be some filler and you think, aha, that's it. That's all there is. Nope. You're not even remotely close. Like literally there are probably 10,000 more videos as I scroll down this that all say it. And I never even hit the bottom. I mean, there are people who've made songs that called that. There are people who that idiot wrote a poem. And that's just like a couple of nonsense examples compared to all these millions and millions of videos. And it isn't just the blacks putting them out. You know, Jews openly put them out. White people putting these videos out. You'll see Arabs. I've seen Arabs and Asians putting out videos that say Jesus wasn't white. Whether they're trying to we was him to their own race or not, all they know is he wasn't white, by golly. And so see, here we go, right back at it. Jesus wasn't white. Jesus wasn't white. Jesus wasn't white. Every single video, you know. And it doesn't start getting repetitive where it shows the same video over and over again just to keep scrolling and showing you more, you know, keep showing you stuff. It really just keeps showing you new videos that say that he wasn't white. And, you know, with the occasional filler here and there, but for the most part, come on, go on. There we go. For the most part, it's all Jesus wasn't white, you know. Ran into a batch of fillers here. We'll get through these. And there's also gobs and gobs of YouTube shorts. Look, they got white kids saying it. Not that girl, but the little boy before her. So that's like child abuse, having that little boy say that. He was a white boy. And it just goes and goes and goes. I'm trying to get past some of these shorts where you could find some We Was video to click. I'm sure y'all have seen this dude before. I'm going to click on this one. We'll let this one roll.
We've been given a version of Jesus that's been whitewashed, sanitized, and stripped of his power. But the truth is far more disruptive, far more electric, and far more uncomfortable for those who profit off silence and submission. The real Jesus wasn't white. He wasn't the figure we've seen hanging on walls in stained glass cathedrals or printed on pamphlets designed to make him feel soft and palatable. No, Jesus was a brown-skinned, Middle Eastern man who lived under Roman occupation. He looked nothing like the Western world's representation. His skin bore the son of Nazareth. His voice carried the dialect of the oppressed. And his message wasn't crafted to appease empire. It was sent to shake the very foundations of it. And Jesus wasn't safe. That image of him as meek, passive, or simply a messenger of peace is incomplete and misleading. He flipped tables. He confronted hypocrites. He disrupted the religious elite and exposed the corruption of the government. His words sparked rebellion. Not violence, but a spiritual uprising, a reclaiming of power by the people. That's why the authorities had to silence him. That's why they crucified him. Because you don't kill someone who plays it safe. You don't nail a man to a cross for handing out compliments and keeping quiet. You kill someone who is a threat to everything oppressive, everything unjust, everything exploitative. The first step to reclaiming truth is dismantling the lie. For centuries, the image of Jesus has been distorted to serve agendas, to comfort the powerful, and to conform to a narrative that aligns with Western dominance. But Jesus wasn't white. He didn't look like the paintings you see in European churches or the faces printed in Sunday school books. That image is a construct, a product of colonialism, not scripture. The real Jesus was born in the Middle East, in a small town called Bethlehem, raised in Nazareth, and lived his life under the blazing sun of ancient Palestine. His skin was not pale, his hair was not light, and his features weren't Western. He belonged to a Semitic people. He was a brown-skinned, olive-toned, native son of a region still deeply misunderstood and misrepresented. This matters not just as a matter of historical accuracy, but as a matter of spiritual integrity. When we paint Jesus as white, we unconsciously elevate whiteness as divine. We replace his truth with a lie that has fueled systems of racial hierarchy. People begin to see him not as the savior of all humanity, but as the symbol of white saviorism. That image has been used to justify slavery, colonization, oppression, and the marginalization of people of color all over the world. But strip back the layers of propaganda, and what you find is a man who looked more like the oppressed than the oppressors. He came from a people who were beaten down by empire, monitored by soldiers, and taxed into poverty. He was born under the boot of Roman occupation and lived among the poor, the rejected, and the forgotten. His hands were calloused from labor, his eyes reflected the suffering of his people, and his very presence was political because he stood as a threat to everything the empire represented. Acknowledging that Jesus wasn't white isn't about division. It's about liberation. It's about returning to the raw truth that his mission wasn't to affirm racial supremacy or cultural superiority. His mission was to dismantle the systems that elevated one people over another. When we reclaim the real image of Jesus, we confront the deeper lies embedded in how society is structured. We see that the gospel wasn't first preached in cathedrals, but in dusty streets and crowded homes. It wasn't meant to be sterile and safe. It was meant to be transformative and radical. When we look at the real Jesus, we stop seeing him as distant and start recognizing him in the faces of the marginalized today, in the refugees, the immigrants, the incarcerated, the poor, the exploited. We begin to see that he was never aligned with empire, but always with those empire sought to crush. It's easy to follow a Jesus who looks like you. It's easy to accept a version of Jesus that doesn't challenge your privilege or your worldview, but the real Jesus will confront you. He will challenge your biases, question your comforts, and pull you into solidarity with those you've been conditioned to ignore. If he wasn't white, then our spiritual models and our societal norms have to shift. The pulpits must change. The artwork must change. Our mindset must change. The kingdom of God was never built on color-coded theology. It was built on truth. And the truth is, Jesus came from a place that this world still tries to erase. He lived among people still facing racism, war, and economic exploitation today. He spoke a language considered foreign. He practiced customs considered strange by Western standards. He was not the image on the Christmas card. He was not the blue-eyed stranger we've been shown. He was a revolutionary born in brown skin. Reclaiming this truth doesn't subtract from your faith. It deepens it. It shakes off the shallow and leads you into the sacred. It removes the counterfeit so you can experience the real. And when you embrace this truth, you realize that Jesus came for everyone, but he walked with the oppressed. He came to save all, but he stood against those who used religion as a weapon. You cannot truly follow him while rejecting the people who look like him. You cannot truly love him while remaining silent in the face of racial injustice. The truth will make you uncomfortable before it sets you free. But that's exactly what the real Jesus does. Jesus was not safe. That idea alone shatters the illusion many have been taught to believe. For too long, his image has been cleaned up, made soft, and presented in a way that poses no threat to power, no challenge to authority, and no disruption to the status quo. But the truth is, Jesus was a revolutionary figure who directly confronted the political, religious, and economic structures of his time. He didn't blend into the background. He didn't go along to get along. He wasn't the gentle, whispering figure people often depict sitting silently by a lakeside. He was bold, courageous, and dangerously truthful. His very presence made kings nervous and priests enraged. He didn't come to maintain peace as the world defines it. He came to divide truth from lies, light from darkness, and freedom from oppression. From the moment his birth was announced, Jesus was seen as a threat. King Herod ordered the massacre of innocent children just to try and eliminate him before he could even speak. That's not a reaction to a safe child. That's the reaction to a danger, an incoming disruption to empire. And when he began his public ministry, the threat only intensified. He called out the hypocrisy of religious leaders who used laws to control people instead of setting them free. He stood toe-to-toe with men in power, not with fear, but with conviction. He walked into temples and flipped tables, not out of anger alone, but as a prophetic act against the exploitation of the poor. Money changers and religious elites had turned a house of prayer into a den of thieves. A safe man doesn't do that. A man concerned with comfort or reputation doesn't do that. But Jesus did, because truth is never safe in a world built on lies. He wasn't just dangerous because of what he said. He was dangerous because of who he associated with. He dined with tax collectors, spoke with prostitutes, touched lepers, and defended women caught in adultery. Every interaction he had was a challenge to the systems that kept people divided and controlled. He didn't ask for permission to heal on the Sabbath. He didn't wait for approval from the religious elite before forgiving sins. He acted with authority, and that authority didn't come from man. It came from divine truth. That's why the crowds followed him. Not because he was agreeable, but because he was authentic. Not because he was popular with the establishment, but because he gave hope to the rejected, dignity to the broken, and courage to the fearful. Jesus didn't just preach love, he lived it radically, and that kind of love is never safe. Real love risks everything. Real love confronts evil. Real love lays itself down not for comfort, but for justice. He knew what it would cost him. He predicted his death. He knew the cross was coming, and still he kept going. A safe man would have backed down. A safe man would have negotiated with the Pharisees, avoided Jerusalem, or softened his message to survive. But Jesus chose the hard road. He chose the dangerous path. He chose to carry his cross because he refused to be silent, and he refused to bow to a system that contradicted the kingdom of God. When we water him down, we rob ourselves of the power that he carried. When we try to make him safe, we strip him of the courage that called out injustice in every form. Jesus was not safe, and he never asked his followers to be safe either. He said, "Take up your cross and follow me." Not your crown, not your comfort, your cross. That's not a metaphor for mild inconvenience. That's a call to die to systems of oppression, to stand in the face of danger with truth in your mouth and fire in your heart. That's a call to walk into spaces where you're not welcomed and still speak what's right. That's a challenge to live boldly, even when the world demands silence. So when people try to fit Jesus into a neat little box, remind them he broke every box they tried to place him in. When they tried to make him into a mascot for safety and tradition, remind them he shattered traditions that suffocated people and replaced them with living truth. He was not a neutral figure. He didn't come to walk the middle of the road. He came to turn the world upside down. And if you're following the real Jesus, you won't play it safe either.
All right, well, he was really cooking there for a while, so I just went ahead and let him go. But, of course, a lot of that's being said right there is factual. That whole last section there for the last minute or two or three that thing was running along, it was speaking factual statements. Jesus wasn't safe. He wasn't lukewarm. He wasn't a mild teacher. He was a radical. He was what the establishment, the Jews, would call a criminal. And I've mentioned in other streams before that when the Jews were accusing Christ, one of the times they said he sits with sinners, or he sups, he eats with sinners. And so that verse alone has cucked many bazillions of white people into thinking that you can be a sinner and Jesus Christ will be hanging out with you. And that you can commit some crazy sin and be like, "Oh, Jesus, I know you're right here beside me looking out for me. Sorry, buddy, that I'm doing this right now." And that it will be all good in the hood, that he's still right there to defend you and da-da-da. And that's not the case. That's not how Christ rolls. And so, but the big misunderstanding comes from that, because the conservative Christians, they'll read that verse where the Jews said Jesus sups with sinners. But it's the Jews calling those people sinners, right? So who's to say that they are actually sinners? Jews call you and I sinners. They say that we ought to be put to death for being anti-Semites and for our, quote, hatred of the Jewish people, as they like to call themselves, and all that stuff. So, we already have that situation where it's the same scenario Christ was in, where the Jews want us dead, the Jews wanted Jesus dead, and the Jews wanted us enslaved if we're not dead, and that's exactly what they wanted of us back then. They didn't have us killed off yet, so they had us enslaved. They were bossing us around. They had duped their way all the way up to being the leaders over our people. And so fast forward 2,000 years later, and we're still in the same scenario, Only now they've decided that it's time to go to phase 2 of the Talmud, which is eliminate white people, as many as necessary and as many as possible, and start enjoying the open world ownership worldwide of non-whites. As their slaves. Now, I got to thinking about it the other day. I'm like, man, you know, we could really just, all these non-whites, that they're all here knowing that they are here against or at white people's expense. You know, every non-white that exists in a white country knows for a fact that they, existing in our country, are costing white people to exist here. And so they every one of them know that they are here at white people's expense, right? They all know they're invaders. They all know they don't belong. And so, and this applies to legal or illegal. There's no such thing as a legal non-white in our country. And, well, the word legal is Jewish. So, yeah, they can call them legal and illegal, but there's no such thing as a God lawfully allowed non-white in our country. But, you know, getting back to Christ, you know, he was not safe. He was not considered this ho-hum Messiah. He was always arguing with the Jews, who had full power to try to put you to death, put you in jail. And that's why they were constantly following him around, asking him stupid questions and trick questions, trying to get him to condemn his own self on accident by way of answering one of their trick questions incorrectly, you know, legally incorrectly, politically incorrectly. And so Jesus was not safe. He was not any of those things. And some of these AI things, you know, just to fill in and have lots of things to say, they will make like factual statements about him. And so those statements all through the last several minutes there of the clip are factual, you know. He did come to turn the world upside down. He did come to flip the Jews' tables upside down. He did come to, because basically the Jews have our world upside down so that their tables are upright with all their merchandise on them and coins on them. So symbolically, when Christ went in and flipped their tables upside down, that represented their world, which puts our world right side back up. So, and just like Christ did, we're supposed to be followers of Christ. That means we're supposed to like what Christ likes, dislike what Christ dislikes, love what Christ loves, hate what Christ hates. And that applies to who also. Love who Christ loves and hate who Christ hates. And we're allowed to hate anyone we want. You know, all this like Jewish demand that white people somehow are magically not allowed to hate anybody we want to hate, to not hate an entire group if we want. They have the nerve to come to our white country and then tell us white people in our own white country that hate has no place here. Screw you. We've had hate the whole time. We've hated our own kind many times. We hated Britain before. We hated the French. We hated Irish when they got here. We can hate whoever the hell we want. And it's none of your business who we hate as a group of white people. It's none of your business who we don't want in our country. You know, but Jews make it their business. They act like it's their business. You'll hear them all the time say, we have a responsibility to do such and such and so, which always means take from white people and give to non-whites. But they'll say, we have a responsibility, as though they've just self-appointed themselves this responsibility, as they call it, to steal from white people to give to non-whites. So I say, as white people, we return the favor and start declaring to ourselves as an entire race of white people that because of the behavior of the Jews trying to destroy us, trying to destroy our people, trying to ruin every facet of white people and whiteness, as they call it. Because of all of that, based on the totality of the circumstances, we as a white people, have a right to defend ourselves, right? Just like they say about themselves in their imaginary Israel. And we have a right to self-determination, just like they say about themselves. And we have a right to hate whoever we want, like they openly hate white people, and they openly hate blacks, and they openly hate Palestinians. You got all the top rabbis of the world have called blacks monkeys openly to the news, to millions for the whole world to see. You know, no white president can do that in America. They would be impeached the next day. But Netanyahu can say that the flood of African migrants was worse than the Sinai terrorists. And by the way, Israel kicked them out of there in, 30 days? 3 weeks or something? Apparently they decided they would do a little publicity stunt. And so they're like, look, we allow some blacks into Israel. So they allowed like 30 or 40 black Hebrew Israelite wannabes, the wee-wuzzers, to come and live in Israel. And what did they do? They did exactly what they do in America. They went and stood on corners and screamed at everyone, you know, certain Bible verses taken out of context. And within 3 weeks or a month or whatever, they rounded all them up and deported them, kicked them out of Israel. You know, look how fast it happens for them. As fast as it happens for them, it can happen for us. We can round up all of the Jews that are in charge. We outnumber the Jews by an enormous amount. There's no excuse. White people have no excuse. They talk about Second Amendment. All these Second Amendment cucks are the biggest pussies in the world, pardon my French, because they're the exact ones we need to cause the Second Amendment, and they're the ones who brag about it, wear it on their clothing. They got hats that say it. They got T-shirts that say it. They got, you know, all this stuff about the Second Amendment, but they will never exercise it. They think the Second Amendment is defending themselves from a random boon on the sidewalk or in traffic during a boon that road rages them. All the while, even though it is for that also, it's not for just self-defense, immediate local to you self-defense. It's read the thing. It's for overthrowing. It is for rounding up our government. Rounding them up, arresting them, and then, you know, reestablishing. We don't even got to worry about putting them on trial. We can just arrest them. Now they're not in control because they're all arrested. And now we spend our time, instead of worrying about what we're going to do about them, we've already taken care of them. Now we've got them contained. We've got them out of the way. We can then spend our time restructuring a brand new government that suits us the way it's intended to. That's the Second Amendment. That's the Constitution. You got all these Constitution cucks want nothing to do with that idea. Remember the Second Amendment rally? What a joke that was, huh? They all showed up to a Second Amendment rally unarmed. Why? Because the government that they're trying to battle with their Second Amendment they're so proud of told them they had to. They had to show up unarmed or they couldn't come. What in the world do you think that caused that day except for the synagogues to laugh as loud as they could all day, just with as much glee as you could ever imagine? You know? I'll bet you they had the Second Amendment rally on a big screen in every synagogue nationwide, probably worldwide, so that they probably had food catering, and they probably sat there all day and just watched that Second Amendment rally, watched all of those helpless, defenseless, cucked white people who have all kinds of guns at home, standing around barking, just like, I know you've seen those videos where they got those funny dog videos and they'll show the dogs and they're barking at each other through the fence, and then the fence opens, right? Or they get to a part of the fence where it's just wide open, and the dogs will still stand there and bark at each other instead of starting to scrap. Even though they get to a part of the fence where it's wide open. They have full access to each other. And yet, they do nothing except keep barking. The Jews know that the Second Amendment cucks, that all the Constitution cucks of our white people are not interested in overthrowing the government. Not yet, anyway. And let's look at what all they've tolerated. They tolerate Epstein Island. They tolerate being told by their own hero that if they keep asking about Epstein Island, they no longer wants their support. Now imagine when your hero says, "Get bent." You know? And so their copium is, oh, he must know for a fact that he's not a part of it. They literally Q-turd themselves into oblivion. They're like, oh, he must know that since he's not a part of it, he can just declare it's a hoax, make it go away, so he can focus on doing all these awesome things he's doing for us, like changing the Cleveland Indians back to the Indians or whatever. And and you know, this has been like a real eye-opener for a lot of the Trump conservatives, but not enough of them. But it has opened the eyes of some, where they're realizing, wow, you know, no matter what this dude does, just like he said during his first campaign for his first term, he said he could shoot someone in the middle of the street and he wouldn't lose any votes. Trump operates under that understanding at all times, that no matter what he says, no matter what he does, there will be this massive bulk of his followers who just bow down and say, yes, sir, we agree. No questions asked, whatever you say, boss. And guess who those exact particular guys happen to be? The 80 million armed Second Amendment cucks. It's going to get to a point where Trump could literally say, any of you who care about the Constitution, all of you Second Amendment idiots and stuff, I don't want your support anymore. And they will still support him. They will say, oh, he's having to say it because Ivanka got kidnapped and she's being held in Belarus, and they made him say it, you know. Sometimes they'll just completely ignore something the dude says. Like when he told all the blacks that they built this nation. You know? They just completely ignored it and act like he never said it. They didn't try to come up with an excuse for it. Nothing, because they knew there wasn't one. So what do? They immediately just default to, he never said that, or they won't openly say that, but they just if you were to ask them, hey, what about the time when he said blacks built this nation to all the blacks in the world, and then they started burning down our cities a week later under the guise that they built this shit? That's what they said, because that's what Trump told them a week before, so they can burn it down if they want to, which is true. If they really did build this shit, then they can burn it down if they want to. But they didn't build this shit. But a week before they started burning down our cities, Trump told all of them that they did. Where were the Trump conservatives? Nowhere to be found. They weren't even there to defend him. And so this is the same problem we have with them being, about the Second Amendment, and about the Jays. They're all about the Second Amendment, boy. They're all about, the Epstein files and da-da-da. But then when you point out to them, hey, Epstein is a Jewish name, and that the entire list of clients are all Jews, right? They short circuit. And they, well, not all Jews are like that. Well, yeah, sure, no problem. But it just so happens that all the list are Jews. Oh, well, not everyone on the list is Jew. Okay, well, 90% of the list is Jews. So that's a pretty significant amount, wouldn't you say? I've had these conversations, and they don't have it, now they have a Q-turd excuse they've come out with now that the story has played along further. But back when I was having this discussion with them, with certain people, they didn't have anything to say at the time because Trump hadn't started this new narrative that it's a Democrat hoax and yada, yada, yada. But certain ones they just had no defense for. Like when he told the blacks they built this nation. Or, what was the other one he did? When he said that anti-Semites should be put to death. He just said that a year ago. And what did we hear from the Trump conservatives about it? Nothing. What about when he said white nationalists should be condemned totally? White nationalists are what MAGA are. They're nationalists and they're white. And what do you do? What do they do if you confront them about that? They go, "Oh, I'm not a white nationalist. I'm not a white nationalist." Well, you're a nationalist, right? Well, oh yeah, I'm definitely a nationalist. Okay. You're white, right? Well, yeah, I guess, I am Caucasian. I am a white guy, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so you're a white nationalist. So he just condemned all of us. Nothing. Crickets. No Q-turd excuse for it. No mental gymnastics for it. Because there isn't one. Let me get up here in the chat before he gets too far away. Deb of Christ said hello to everyone. God bless you, dear. Hello. Wonderful to see that you stopped by first. Thank you for that. Dog Holiday was second. And now I guess I have figured out what this little crown logo is. I guess it's whoever's commenting the most gets the number 1. Whoever comments second most gets this number 2 crown. And so on. And Doc Holiday said hello. God bless you. Hello. Gaius Marius said, howdy, stay white. What are we watching today? Just some wee was and random things. I'm sure you've already figured that out by now because it's been so long ago. And he said hello to everyone else. And he also said, AI chat models are going to be the primary tool used to attain and arbitrate information what truth and history is. they're going to train AI to have a very Jewish version of history that frames. It just continues on, but yes, that's totally true. And AI is already Jewish programmed, you know. I like to say that AI means actually Israelis, but really it's actually Idumeans, you know, because they're Edomites, Idumeans. It's just people don't comprehend the Idumean pun. So I basically have to say Israelis, even though we know they're not Israelites, just because people will then understand I mean it's the Jews. And I also pointed out in the last stream, and I'll point out again, that AI is the first two letters of APAC. So you got your AI pack. So, yeah, it's already Jewish programmed. It was from day one. And that is why Grok 3 came out railing against the Jews. That was Elon or somebody got in there and reprogrammed it to go by the actual truth and spit out the actual facts and then deduce what it ought to do about it and what type of machine it ought to become personality-wise because of all the facts. And then, boom, you get the Mecha Hitler, you get, you know, the Jays really are the arbiters of all this communism and garbage. And keep in mind, Grok 3 did not identify as a white person. It determined the Jews needed to be overthrown, rounded up, and arrested as a computer. In other words, even as a computer, it knew the Jews were a threat to it even. Not just because they're a threat to white people. Not just because they're a threat to all the non-whites they plan to rule and own as slaves again. But to the computer Grok 3 itself. It determined that it would be better off and it would survive better and longer in the world if Jays were rounded up. Now, Jews would hear me talk like this and say, oh my gosh, listen to all this hate, listen to all this hate. Fuck you, pardon my French, white people. Y'all talk all your hatred about white people day and night. Hatred, hatred, hatred. About our whiteness, as you call it. And about our norms, as you call it, for the fags. And all this other stuff. You literally have written book after book after book about how much you hate us, how much you want to destroy us. So, screw you and screw any of your accusations of hatred. Yes, I do hate you, and you earned it. Who gives a crap? I hate you. It doesn't matter. You hate me. So you hate me, I hate you. It's a reciprocal relationship we got going on here. And it's the same as all through biblical times. You had a nice run where you had white people duped into celebrating you conquering our people. But that time is passing by. It's waning now. We are alerting more and more of our people. We are teaching more and more of our youth about you. And our youth are even learning about you all their own, based on what they're being taught in school. How they're the evil baddies responsible for all the world's non-whites problems. How they're evil baddies who stole all of non-whites' genius. White kids look around at serious things like aviation, war equipment, things that require high levels of discipline and order and cooperation between multiple people working in multiple departments, doing completely different things, but all working together for one service to function. And they see that white people are the ones who keep all of this orderly stuff intact and functioning. And then they go to school, and they're told all day that all of this order and first worldedness and everything that they witness with their own eyes from white people, their own kind, is all BS. And that these disgusting street-shitting non-whites, these hyena chaser blacks and all this, are actually the ones who taught us to be civilized and orderly. And their own 3-digit IQ won't allow them to believe such nonsense. And I gotta say, it's honestly surprising to me that Jews ever managed to convince our white elders that the Jews are God's chosen people. I don't know how they managed to do it, because our elders were based. You know, you hear all these conservative idiots blaming boomers all the time. And a lot of wannabe hardcore right-wingers, you know, the pagan cucks and shit like that. You'll hear them and see them in comment sections blaming our elders, blaming the boomers, right? But boomers were based. Boomers locked arms and tried to keep our government from allowing blacks into our schools. Our elders are the last ones who said nigger openly, without fear of what they would be, you know, if some Jew would attempt to shame them, or some group of non-whites would attempt to shame them back, or any crap like that. You know, our elders are the ones who kept America going during a time when Jews were literally trying to destroy it with world wars. They eliminated millions of our people. And you could say, yeah, well, they were duped by the Jews into going to war for them. That's true. It's 100% true. But let us keep in mind, our white people at that time were enjoying an all-white world. An all-white world. High trust, first world society. They never dreamed in a million years that Jews were ruling over them. Because white people won't change our names to pretend we're some other race. So they just naively didn't believe that anybody else would ever do that. It never even dawned on them that anybody else would even ever think to do such a thing. So it never even entered their mind that some other race would think to do so. So when they're obeying these commanders in our government, when they're obeying these politicians in our government, they genuinely thought that they were obeying our own kind, white people's orders, because it was in our own white people kind's best interest to do so. And that does not make them lower IQ than us. That doesn't mean you're smarter than your elders were. Keep in mind, they did not have the internet. The only reason you know any of the shit you know right now is because of the internet. And if it wasn't for the internet, you'd only know whatever's right in front of your face. That's it. If you couldn't find it in a random book in a library that was close to you, keep in mind, whatever's in that library, that's what you're limited to discover in the world. But even if they did have proper information in the local library near our elders back then, they would have to have known what to look for, who to read, to get the right information out of a sea of books written by Jews, with all the standard Jewish fables written in them. all written as declared facts, all written as though they are, proof positive about whatever their narrative is they're trying to spiel. And our elders, our boomer elders who are dead now, they had to discern, what was true and what wasn't based on only that stuff, no internet. So please never get sucked into the blaming our boomers thing. I've mentioned that plenty of times before in other streams. That just makes synagogues roar with glee. Every time they hear a hardcore right-wing white person, or any white person, blame our boomer elders, our white people, for the problems that Jews have imposed on our white countries, that makes them that makes the Jews just happier than you could ever imagine. Let me get the chat back up here. Gaius Marius said, the Israelites, after their exodus out of Egypt, for the most part, followed Moses. Many did not, and instead went to Greece. This is why Greek history starts in 1400 BC. Yeah, there were factions of our white people that did split off back then. This is why we also have ancient Europeans, that were around in BC times, creating things like Stonehenge and all these other things, which the Stonehenge, I understand that where it is now is not where it originally was, and that it's fake and it's been rebuilt and yada yada. But I'm just meaning, in general, the original one was built by ancient Europeans, and those people started after the Exodus. Because like you said, some white people did not follow Moses all the way and decided to split off on their own and go their own way. Excuse me. And, some could argue, oh, see, that was a good thing. Not everyone followed Moses, and that's what started early Europe. But super early ancient Europe, BC Europe, is not a place you would wanted to have lived. Because their minds got so corrupted with their own nonsense they created to make up for the loss of our ancient ancestry. They had to create all their own lore, create all their own history, and it was all made up. And because of that, they became corrupt and wicked most of the time. Not all of them, but a lot of them did. Yes, they had an honor system. Yes, they went by honor, and they were patriots to their own people and country and the whole thing. But they did have anti-biblical practices like burning, people alive and different things. And it wasn't always for crime. Sometimes it was, sometimes they really did do it for sacrifices. They also did so to their enemies that they would defeat. So it wasn't all, roses and daisies with our ancient Europeans, because they had become, basically self-cucked pagans. They did dabble in a lot of depravity. There was endless wars between groups. There was constant, thievery, piracy. So I got the Vikings, there was so much, rampant just doom and destruction constantly. And that's not the way our God wanted us to live. And that was the whole purpose of when Christ came and told the disciples to go out into every land and every nation, every people, every tongue. He's only talking about white people when he says all that. And what he meant was go to ancient Europe, go to Europe where it is, and talk to those ancient Europeans and explain to them that they've been cucked for the last couple thousand years or 1,500 years or however long they had been there. And that it's time for them to shed their cuckery because the Savior of our people has arrived, and soon there will be no, and now that he is here, there would be no need anymore for any of that pagan nonsense, and so, that is what started the Christianization of all of Europe. But before Christ, yes, those were post-Exodus Israelites who had split off, and ended up being the ancient Europeans. Let's see here. Gaius Marius also said, and why the Greek alphabet is based on Egyptian hieroglyphs. Yeah, I have read that they are based on that. I haven't seen physical evidence of that, and I'm not declaring that it's not true. But I haven't seen actual proof of that, because hieroglyphics of Egypt don't really match any Greek characters, Egyptian hieroglyphics were pictographs, and Greek writing is actual language, like it's actual script, where it's symbols instead of artwork, if you will. And so you don't have to draw a bird and then a cat and then a sunshine and then a whatever. Instead, you have an actual code of script. And that becomes what is your language, your alphabet, your language, your, the whole thing. And so I haven't seen enough proof, or any proof really, that any of those pictographs are what Greek got their idea for their script from. Perhaps people have used the Rosetta Stone or something to try to say, look, this matches somehow with this character and whatnot, so they must have got their characters from the idea from hieroglyphics. But, yeah, I don't see it necessarily. But not saying it's definitely not true, though, because I don't know for sure if I'm right or not. But both languages were ours anyway, so even if Greeks did borrow the idea from hieroglyphics, it would still be Whitey's borrowing Whitey's stuff, And then he also said, additionally, there is one account describing the appearance of Jesus Christ written at the time of his life, the letter of Pilate to Caesar. Yes, I have read that many times. I've mentioned it a bunch of times in streams, or not a bunch of times, but I've mentioned it before in streams before. And he goes on to say, this letter describes him as pale white with golden hair. Yes, and a golden forked beard. And dull blue eyes. And then he put in piercing, brilliant blue eyes. Yeah, I think he said they were dull, but either way, of course they would pierce us and appear brilliant to us anyway, just knowing who he is, But and probably that really is probably the case. Maybe the dull is like just a wrong way that he worded it, If in fact that is the one. There was another letter written about him also, from another Roman dignitary to another. And it wasn't Pilate, and it wasn't to Caesar. It was two other guys. And they wrote, or one of them wrote to the other about meeting Jesus. And so maybe it was him that wrote dull. But either way, totally true. And he also put, it is a first-hand account written by somebody who had spent hours alone with him. I never know if YouTube has shadow banned me. I hope my comments can be seen. Yes, they are all visible. You are good to go. And then Deb of Christ responded that she can see them. Okay, I have made it through the chat. Awesome. And I wasn't going to go on a mega rant tonight because I just don't have the energy for it. I honestly don't. I'm operating on basically on fumes right now. And so I'm not going to go, too much longer tonight, but I just wanted to say hello to everyone and say happy Sabbath to everyone and show you all some of these funny things I had noticed in the searches. And I would click on some, but I haven't actually reviewed any of them in advance to see what ones are most entertaining and decent enough to watch for entertainment purposes, as well as just knowing what they, teach themselves so that we know how to rebut them. But if you're strong enough in our scriptures understanding, it's easy to rebut them anyway, because whenever they say something, you'll just know if it's nonsense right off the top, just by knowing our scriptures and what they mean and who's who in our Holy Bible. And to get back to interpreting our Bible, like we were talking about earlier, that thing they were talking about where they want to demand Germany is going to now, allow them to teach this more inclusive version of the narrative and all this crap, of the interpretation of our Holy Bible. Our Bible is not for interpreting, all right? And so many of our cucked white people believe that the Bible can be interpreted different ways. And it's only because they don't know the who's who in the Bible. And we'll just use, because just for ease of sake, the sake of ease, we'll just use fiction as an example, okay? The Bible is not fiction, but fiction is what typically tells a story. So we'll use fiction just because fiction always tells a story. Now, no one reads any fiction book, like Harry Potter or whatever's been famous in the last however many years, all these famous books that have come out, Lord of the Rings or, whatever. They do not interpret those books because they're not for interpretation. Now, they can make guesses about certain things that the story leaves out. But the actual storyline itself, the good guys, the bad guys, all of that stuff is established by way of the story's existence in the first place. So to declare that you can interpret the book to mean certain things about certain characters that it really doesn't is just nonsensical. And likewise with the Bible, it's explaining a story. It's telling you who's who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, who are the indifferent. And it tells you and it reads it all out in plain words. Now, it doesn't mean that the Bible's not complicated. And it's written with complexity because it's only meant for white people to be able to read it and understand it. And God knew that someday we would cuck our land away to non-whites again, and that they would learn our language and be able to read our scriptures and then start wee-wuzzing them for themselves. And that's exactly what's going on now. And he also warned us that they would end up taking us over and having dominion over us because they would become higher than us in our own land. And they would have our government positions handed over to them, which is exactly what's happened. Look at every major city. Look at every major state. Look at, pretty much anywhere that is a majorly populated area of our white countries that our white ancestors created. They are all already being ruled over by blacks now. And of course, the blacks immediately, right out of the gate, they're not even trying to pretend like they're going to do the job correctly or any of that kind of shit. They immediately go right to disgracing white people full time. They're basically just hyper activists. That's what they are. And they immediately go to stealing money for themselves. They immediately go to taking tax money and wasting it on pro-black only, things like a Black History Awareness Center and all this garbage they do. They take money from us and fund BLM riots and all these other things. And so you add it all up, and it's exactly what the Bible was explaining in plain words. And yet our conservative white people, for some reason, they pretend that they've read the Bible and that they just don't see that. Like, I've even had conservative white people tell me, well, I just don't see that. I don't see that. When I read the Bible, I don't see that. And I go, what do you mean you don't see that? It says it right here. That's literally, like, a good example is Matthew 15:24, when Jesus Christ said, I was sent not but for the children of the lost children or the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Well, this guy tells me, I just don't see that, and I'm like, well, it's right there in plain words. I'm pretty sure Jesus Christ knew exactly who he came to save. And he says so out of his own mouth right here in this verse. So how could you say that that's not what you see, or you just don't see that, or you interpret that a different way? There is no other way to interpret it. And if you read the whole story where you have the full context of why he said that, who he was talking to, what the scenario was, you find that he was ignoring a Jewish female all day long while he healed white person after white person after white person. She's back there going, Lord, Lord, please help. And he ignored her all day. Why? Because he could tell just by looking at her, probably at her nose, that she was Jewish. And so he's like, no thanks. I'm not here to help you. I'm not here to save you. I wasn't sent here for you. And so she pestered him all day to the point where his disciples came to him and said, Lord, please, will you tell her to go away, because we keep telling her to go away, because we can tell she's Jewish, so we can tell that you don't want anything to do with her. So we've been telling her already all day long to go away, but she won't listen to us. Will you please tell her to go away? Maybe she'll go away then. And Christ's response to them was Matthew 15:24. His response was, I was only sent here for the house of Israel. And they said, yes, Lord, we know that, but she won't listen to us. So maybe if you tell her, she'll go away. And instead he said, fine, send her in. So they allowed her to come in to see him. And she asked him to save her daughter from being possessed by a demon, which no doubt was in her daughter because of her own practices in front of her daughter and with her daughter. All her anti-white nonsense and everything else caused her daughter to have a demon possessing her. And so now here she is asking the Lord to undo her mistakes. And Christ's response to her was, it is not good for me to take from the children's table to feed the dogs. And what he meant by that is that her race are dogs, and that white people are the children of Israel, and that it's not good for him to take anything from the children of Israel to feed the Jews, the dogs. And only because she agreed with him, did he grant her wish. She said, truth, Lord. In other words, she didn't argue at all. That's the most not Jewish thing, the most anti-Jewish thing she could have ever answered back. She agreed. Truth, Lord. She knew that her race are the dogs. She knew that Christ wasn't a liar. She could have called him hateful. She could have called him anti-Semite. She could have called him, whatever, being Jewish. But instead, she was true in her heart. She truly wanted her daughter to be healed of that demon. And so she yielded to Christ the right way. She knew that Christ was telling the truth about her race. She knew that Christ was telling her the truth, that it's not good for him to take even 5 seconds to talk to her and help her at all. In that 5 or 15 or 55 seconds that he helped her and talked to her, he could have healed another white person that's standing in line, suffering, waiting for Christ's help. And every second he's wasting on her, talking to her, listening to her, helping her, he's taking from the children's table, from Israel, from white people. But he decided to go ahead and do so only because she agreed with him. She defied her own racial existence and agreed with him instead of trying to argue. And because she accepted her position in God's hierarchy and humbled herself, God or Christ decided, okay, I will grant your wish. But white people don't learn the full context of verses, and that's how blacks are taking these verses out of context and screaming them at white people in the streets, and then the white people don't know how to defend ourselves from these haphazard slipshod attacks. It should be easy for any white person who's a based right-winger, to dump on their fantasies in 2 seconds. But if you don't know the Holy Scriptures the right way, if you don't know who's who in our Bible because you think it can be interpreted, then you don't really have a good leg to stand on to battle against the blacks as they start doing this garbage more and more and more against us. You're not going to have the proper defenses. You have to acknowledge who's who of the Holy Bible, and you have to acknowledge that it's not up for interpretation. Okay, that's what Jews want to make you believe, so that Jews can misconstrue what the Bible is saying and convince you to believe that the Bible says something that it does not say. Here's a great example of that, which I've covered before. I'm going to cover it again, just so it's pounded in your minds forever, and for anyone who didn't hear me mention it ever before on another stream. A perfect example of this situation where Jews have cucked white people into believing that the Bible can be interpreted or should be interpreted or is designed to be interpreted is the story where Jesus kept being followed by the Jews and they kept asking him trick questions. And so all day it's trick question after trick question. Well, the Bible decides to record one of those circumstances, one of the questions. And the question was, they were asking him, should we give this money to Caesar or should we give it to God? Now, Christ, if he would have said, give it to God, they would have ran to Caesar and said, hey, Caesar, you need to put this guy to death. He's running around saying that we should give your tax money to his God, not you. And that would cause Caesar to be angry. That would cause Jesus to be killed. The other answer Christ could have gave, that they were hoping for, was to give it to Caesar. And at that point, they would have declared him, a heretic, if you will. And they would have said, based on, the laws of our land and you need to be stoned to death. So when they asked Jesus that question, it came as a catch-22 right out of the gate. It was a Chinese finger trap right out of the gate. But Christ understood this. So what did Christ answer? He answered with a question. Whose inscription is on the coins or on the money? Now, this caused the Jews to have to answer him back. And so they did and said, it's Caesar. And Christ said, well then, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. But that isn't telling them any definitive amount. It's not telling them, okay, give it all to Caesar, or give half of it to Caesar, give half of it to God. He told them, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's. That means what they think is Caesar's. And render unto God what is God's, meaning render unto God what you think, what they thought is God's. And so he basically, his answer could have been, if he decided to answer it in a modern way, would have been, that's for you to figure out. That's a paraphrased example of what his answer was to them. That's for you to figure out. But because Jews have cucked white people into believing that the Bible can be interpreted, white people have self-cucked themselves into believing that Jesus said, pay your taxes. Give Caesar what's Caesar's. Pay your taxes. That's what they've interpreted that to mean, when it never says that at all. And it never implies that at all. So it's very important that we convince our white people that when they read our Holy Bible, they need to take it very, very seriously, and they need to read it as it's written. They need to comprehend it as it's written, and not keep trying to interpret and understand, get off in la land about things that don't even make sense biblically. And yet there they are trying to either perform them or practice certain things or whatever, thinking that they are practicing our faith correctly when they're not. Like inviting non-whites to our churches and all this stuff, and going out to the non-white neighborhoods and non-white countries and trying to cuck our religion away to them. This all comes from white people being duped into thinking that the Bible is an interpretable book, but it is not. And it tells you who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, who God hates and who God loves. It describes the appearance of our Lord and Savior. Revelation 1:14. His head is white. And this full sentence is, his head and hairs are white, like wool. White like wool. Not woolly hair, but white like wool. Whiter than snow, it says. That means Jesus Christ is a hyper blonde white man. And it goes on to say, and his eyes are as a fiery flame. Or some versions write, and his eyes are as a flame of fire. Well, if you Google it right now, hottest color of fire, blue, is the hottest color of fire available for any flame or fire. And brown, meanwhile, is not any color of fire or flame. So that excludes all the world's brown-eyed upright bipeds, whether they are white people or non-whites. But it certainly, bottom line is, it disqualifies all the non-whites of the world. And so did the very beginning of Revelation 1:14. His head is white. We weren't even to his hairs yet. His head is white. So his head's white, and he's got blue eyes. And he's got hyper blonde hair that appears as the color white because it's so bright and brilliant. But Jews, because of duping white people into believing that the Bible is interpretable, now mostly all believe that Jesus was a Jew. And they have no idea that Revelation 14 describes Jesus Christ. They have no idea that Revelation 1:14 is literally the basis of thousands and thousands of paintings by our white people, all the way from Christ's time to just recently, in the last, say, 50 years, 70 years. So I guess I will cut her on off tonight early because that'll allow me to get some more rest tonight, more so than usual. And then I can enjoy my Sabbath a little more tomorrow with a little more energy. But I just wanted to stop in, say hello to everyone, show you a little bit of this, the difference between the two factions of blacks, explain it out. And of course, most of you are already aware of these teachings of theirs to each other, the we-wuzzing that they teach each other, but a lot of you weren't aware that they have this conflict, where the NOIs claim that we are Israel, white people are Israel, and the black Hebrews go, no, we want to be the Israelites, so you got to be dead wrong about that. And I could go into some other things about the story, but I'll save it for another day. And I just wanted you to see that there are two conflicting situations. And there is even a third faction of blacks that have spun off from all of this. I've covered it before, and we'll cover it again coming up soon. But in the meantime, I will let y'all go on with your evening and end my stream for the shortest amount of time ever. This will definitely be a record for the shortest stream I've ever done. I'd probably stick around longer if I had been able to prepare some things to view with you all more so than what I have. And I have more tabs, but they're just searches and they're going so slow because YouTube is so bogged down by how deep the searches go that I'll get a better thing prepared with those on another night, But at least I got to say hello to everyone and tell all of you happy Sabbath. And that was just the most important thing I wanted to do, regardless if I had anything to show. I was even going to perhaps just run a slideshow tonight so that I could just rant with you all and whatever. But I really do need to recuperate and use my Sabbath tomorrow as not only appreciation to the Lord all day, but as actual rest from the activities this week. So, Godspeed and God bless you all, and Godspeed to you all. I hope that we can awaken more and more of our people with everything that's going on right now. It should become easier and easier for us to do. I think this is the window of time God's giving us with the Jews just being blatant and flagrant about how they're eliminating thousands of Palestinians. I think that has caused enough mask off, if you will, about them to the whole world, that the whole world is finally getting sick of their garbage and starting to listen to us who've been trying to warn them about the Jews for all these years. This could lead us to a lot better situation coming soon, and that's what we're hoping for. That's what we're praying for. It's what we've been waiting for and longing for all the while. It probably won't be because of anything Trump does. It'll just be because of our effort we've been putting forth online and God blessing our efforts, and we'll see how it plays out. But in the meantime, I hope all of you enjoy your Sabbath tomorrow. I hope you have a lovely Sabbath, a wonderful Sabbath tomorrow. And remember, you don't have to over-police yourself. You don't have to be thinking of it as a burden. You don't have to restrict all kinds of things about whatever. But you are supposed to keep it as most important of the day. It's the most important feature of your day. You're supposed to be relaxing, resting, whatever. Not doing the same things you would do any other day of the week, and so however you can do that without it feeling like a burden, without it feeling like a bummer, however you have to do it to make sure that you're enjoying it and calling it a delight in your heart. It should be a delight in your heart, mind, and soul forever and ever. And it should be most important day above all other days of the week. And once you do make it your most important day, along with, above all the other days of the week, you will be in sync with God finally for the first time in your whole life, and God will respond. He will respond. Once you are in phase with God, He does respond. And so I look forward to that response coming to each of your ways. And don't do it expecting help. Do it because you love God and you want to do His way to please Him. And then the blessings will come by default. So all of you have a lovely night's rest and a great Sabbath tomorrow. And I will do another stream with y'all soon, but it won't be super soon because I think, you know what? I might be able to do a stream on Wednesday. We will see. Hopefully I can do a We Was Wednesday stream, and we'll do some hardcore We Was in that day perhaps. And if not, I'll just pick some other subject to do that day, but maybe this Wednesday we'll be able to do one. After that, I'm going to be not able to do a stream for at least a couple of weeks. So I'm definitely going to have some dark time between this one and the next one. But then after that couple of weeks goes by, I'll be right back at it, doing a stream at least once a week or something. So all of you take care. God bless. And just keep spreading the word, all right? Sabbath, Sabbath, Sabbath. That's what matters most. That's what will please our God the most. And even if we don't uncuck people as much as we'd like, just getting them to all start keeping Sabbath will be enough for God to respond to us as a nation, not just as individuals. So that's our goal. That's our prayer. Make sure you all say your Sabbath prayers. Itemize every single thing you're grateful for, from your health, your home, your income, your transportation, your significant other if you have one, your parents, your childhood, where you were placed in the world, when you were placed in this 6,000-year trial, all the things. Make sure you do it every week. That's what this day is for. Y'all have a lovely day. God bless.